Today we're going to be creating a wall art DIY using a glue gun, some canvas, and some felt so that we can bring some positivity into our lives. And if you love everything cute and pet related, be sure to subscribe because my mom and I create all types of DIY videos about these topics. So let's get into it. First thing we're going to do is, of course, remove the wrapping from our canvas. I'm using a 5x7 size just to get started. After, I grabbed a black piece of felt because I wanted to do a silhouette that was reminiscent of my own kitties. So you can choose your own color. Of course, since I'm using a black, then I had to use a white chalk, but pretty much any other color. You can use a pen or a pencil to make your markings. Remember, you're just doing something to help you know where to cut next. Unless, of course, you want to be a risk taker and just cut and hope for the best. As you go through the project, make sure that when you cut, you're cutting to exactly how you want it to be. Don't leave that to be a last minute detail because you will probably miss something. So it's better to take the time. If you're making something symmetrical like I am, fold it along the center line and cut so that you know you're happy with the shape that you're getting. I'm going to be placing the felt down and making sure that I have enough of it that I'm going to be able to fold it down the middle so that I don't have just a sharp cut, but rather a crease line. For the project, I would recommend that you use a full sheet of felt. However, I'm using scraps, so I'm going to be using 2 pieces of the blue to cover up the space. Now that I'm happy with the location of where the cat head should be, then I went ahead and made my cut of the felt so I could use that as a reference for my other piece. As you're cutting it, remember that it doesn't need to be a perfect straight line because you're hiding this behind the canvas, so no one's going to see it, so don't stress over it. Remember to stay positive and enjoy what you're making. Now that we have the main background and the main shape, I'm going to be adding some eyes to my silhouette. My senior girl, Shinobi, has yellow eyes, so I'm opting to use a gold color for the eyes. To make the shape, I'm doing like a half oval and then drawing some lines. These are just random, 5 of them or 4, however many makes you happy. Then, since I'm making this up as I go, I'm cutting out the eyes with the eyelashes to make sure that the size is going to be appropriate so that we don't waste any materials. We always want to preserve as much as possible because even with the scraps, we can always make something new. Thankfully, my eyes do fit perfectly side to side, so I'm going to cut a second part just like it. Because of how thick this felt material is, I am drawing the eyelash on the other side as well. So they're not going to be perfectly even, but they will look alike because they're both the same size. When cutting the eyelashes, I started with the top, but really you could stop with the eyelashes too. I'm just figured it would be the best way to get used to the handling of the scissors. If you have smaller ones, then you should use those instead. But as you can see, I'm really trying to do section by section, and I'm cutting out the holes as I go instead of just doing them all at once because I want to make sure that I don't accidentally cut somewhere that I shouldn't, and if I do, I have enough wiggle room to fix it. Out of everything, this is probably the most tedious part, but it will be worth it because it's going to give it a very girly and sophisticated and just graphic look. The easiest way I found to cut the eyelashes out was to make the lines, so side by side to the lines you drew, and then cut the excess and repeat. Now that we finished cutting the eyes, we're gonna place them on our silhouette. For the background, I wanted something sweet and gentle, so I decided to make some flowers and I just drew them with a pencil so I knew where to cut. If this is your first time cutting felt, I really recommend that you cut out the bigger shape first and then go back in for the details because felt is a very stiff material, so it'll be hard to manipulate all these little small cuts for the dips in between the flower petals if you try to do it as you have that massive sheet stuck next to it. And don't worry, if you're worried about the smaller pieces that are falling down, you will get a chance to use some of them to make some additional petals to decorate all around the cat. I like seeing things come together as I create them, so I am placing everything along the sides of the background. Now, I use the same flower as my guide for all of them, but for any flowers that just did not look great, or I just wasn't happy with the way that they came out, I made those into small petals, single petals, so that I could float them all around the background. Still trying to make pretty flowers to decorate, but not wasting any of my materials. After I cut all the flowers I wanted, I cut smaller pieces of purple felt for the center of them to give it an extra pop of color, to keep it calm and without being too overwhelming to look at. After everything in the background had been cut, then I removed it away from the canvas because now we're getting into the gluing part. And because I placed it where I wanted it to, I didn't want any of that to get messed up. So I was very gentle as I pulled it back, and I'm gluing as much as I can, especially the little circles for the flowers, so that they don't start flying away, and I'm trying to figure out where they got lost. To glue it down on the canvas, I wanted it to be tight so that there wouldn't be any potential bubbles. So I glued at the bottom, along the sides, at the top of the canvas first, just so I could press it down and make sure that it was perfectly even. Always patting it down right after so that it could stretch all the way. Since I opted to use 2 pieces of felt, I put some glue down the middle, which I think helped the overall outcome. It really just comes down to how much extra felt you're adding as a decoration. If you're following exactly what I'm doing, you probably don't need it. But if you're going a little bit more avant-garde and adding more flowers, more things, then yes, you definitely want to ensure that you reinforce the center so it doesn't droop down over time. Afterward, it's just a matter of gluing every single piece exactly where you want it. As you're gluing the flowers, be careful of where you're adding the glue. So like if you're close to the edges, decide if you really want it to curve along the crease line, or if maybe you only put the glue down on one portion of the flower and leave the other one loose so that it stands out a little bit outside of the outline of the canvas. So this is all a creative choice, but just something to be mindful of. Now for the silhouette, if you decided to do one of a face or a puppy or a cat like I did, then you still want to make sure that you add glue all around the edges of it. So what I ended up doing was that I did the top of the head first to give it some stability, because I had already started gluing the flowers all around it, so I wanted to make sure that that stayed where it was supposed to. And then I followed the path along with the flowers, so I only glued the bottom once everything else was also glued. I feel like doing it this way guaranteed that I had exactly what I was looking at in the end, because sometimes if you try and get ahead of yourself, you might end up with the glue stuck somewhere that you don't want it to. So I did some glue around the neckline and also the body, but not enough for the fold. As I get ready to flip over, I also glued down the eyes so that it would be nice and firm and ready when I turned it, and started adding the glue along the sides of the canvas. And I only added the glue on the side that I was working on, really focusing on creating a sharp crease line. For any excess felt you might have in the back, you can always keep it or cut it off. However you want to do, it will not impact how you're able to hang it, because the wooden frame itself is going to give you where it's going to hang and the felt will fold to it. So after some trial and error, I would recommend that you do both of the long edges first and then focus on the smaller sections, because once you get to the smaller sections, you're going to have to cut out that little dip that I created by folding along the crease line so that it doesn't get too bulky. Then add the glue over as a small triangle, add some more glue to the top very close to the edge because you don't want it to peep out, and fold it over, pressing firmly. Once you have folded that background color, Then you can fold over your silhouette because it's going to give you the ability to stretch it out even more than if you had it glued at first to the background and then done both together. And after, it's just a matter of hanging it up in your perfect location. And if you'd like to see more projects with felt, like how to make a cat face out of felt, go ahead and watch this video right here. Thanks for watching.